World War II's Eastern Front was the site of some of the largest, bloodiest, and most strategically complex battles in history. The Soviet Union, initially caught off guard by the German invasion in 1941, rapidly adapted and developed a range of war tactics that ultimately led to the defeat of Nazi Germany. Soviet war tactics in World War II combined massive manpower, innovative use of armor and artillery, deep operations, and a relentless spirit that overwhelmed the Wehrmacht and changed modern warfare forever. 1. Deep Operations Doctrine. One of the most important tactical concepts employed by the Soviets was the Deep Operations Doctrine. Developed in the 1920s and 1930s but fully realized during World War II, this doctrine emphasized breakthrough of enemy front lines using concentrated armored and infantry assaults, rapid exploitation by mechanized forces to penetrate deep into enemy territory, disrupting enemy command, logistics, and reserves far behind the front. This tactic aimed to paralyze the enemy by destroying not just their frontline troops but also their capacity to respond or reorganize. A classic example was Operation Bagration, 1944, where Soviet forces encircled and destroyed large portions of the German Army Group Center, using coordinated infantry, tank, artillery, and air strikes to achieve rapid and deep penetration. 2. Massed armor and mechanized warfare. The Red Army's use of massed tank formations was a hallmark of their approach. Unlike early war tactics where tanks were dispersed to support infantry, the Soviets concentrated armored units in powerful tank corps and armies. T-34 tanks, with their balance of firepower, armor, and mobility, were the centerpiece of Soviet armored tactics. Tank units would punch through weak points in German lines, then exploit the breach by rapidly advancing and encircling enemy forces. Soviet combined arms tactics ensured tanks were supported by infantry, artillery, and air cover to prevent vulnerabilities. This was evident in battles like the Battle of Kursk, 1943, the largest tank battle in history, where Soviet tank defenses absorbed the German offensive and launched powerful counterattacks. 3. Artillery and rocket barrages. Soviet tactics made heavy use of overwhelming artillery firepower. Before major offensives, massive artillery barrages would be unleashed to destroy German defenses, disrupt communications, and demoralize enemy troops. The Soviets also innovated with Katyusha rocket launchers, which delivered devastating rapid-fire rocket salvos. These rocket barrages were mobile, highly destructive, and capable of striking targets at a distance, complementing traditional artillery. Such firepower often paved the way for infantry and armor advances by softening enemy defenses. 4. Partisan warfare and behind-the-lines operations. Soviet tactics extended beyond conventional battlefield engagements. The use of partisan fighters, irregular troops operating behind German lines, was integral to disrupting enemy supply chains, sabotaging railways and bridges, and gathering intelligence. The partisans worked in coordination with regular Soviet forces. Their activities forced the Germans to divert troops to rear area security, easing pressure on frontline units. This guerrilla warfare element was a force multiplier that complemented the Red Army's large-scale offensives. 5. Defensive depth and elastic defense. In the early years of the war, the Soviets learned to employ defensive tactics that absorbed and slowed the German blitzkrieg. Instead of holding rigid lines, Soviet units practiced elastic defense, retreating when necessary to draw enemy forces into kill zones. Layers of defensive positions, minefields, and counterattacks would wear down German advances. This allowed the Red Army to stabilize fronts, buy time to rebuild forces, and plan counteroffensives. The successful defense of Moscow, 1941, and Leningrad, 1941-44, demonstrated these tactics effectively. 6. Human wave attacks and mass mobilization. Though costly, the Soviets often relied on mass infantry assaults, sometimes called human wave tactics, to overwhelm enemy positions. Large numbers of infantry, often supported by artillery, would press attacks relentlessly. This approach reflected the Soviet willingness to accept high casualties for strategic gains. However, as the war progressed, the Red Army improved its tactical sophistication, reducing unnecessary losses and emphasizing combined arms coordination. 7. Use of air power. The Soviet Air Force (VVS) evolved from early war weakness to become a crucial support element, providing close air support to ground troops, interdicting German supply lines and reinforcements, conducting large-scale bombing raids on strategic targets. By 1944-45, Soviet air tactics integrated tightly with ground operations, contributing decisively to victories. Soviet war tactics in World War II were shaped by necessity, innovation, and a vast human and material resource base. From deep operations and mechanized warfare to partisan resistance and overwhelming artillery firepower, these tactics enabled the Red Army to absorb the initial German onslaught and mount devastating counteroffensives that culminated in victory in 1945. These strategies not only helped win the war but also influenced post-war military doctrines worldwide, underscoring the Red Army's transformation into a modern fighting force.